Welcome to the Jew Function. Hi, Seth.
Hey, Leo. Good to see you again.
Good to see you again. I'm very excited. We have a really great guest today that we're going to intro in a second. But meanwhile, I was just appreciating what's going on in the world and what's going on here in Israel. It's like I'm getting more and more stories right now from that dark Saturday, and one thread that's coming through is that everybody was talking about the same thing, whether it's those people who died or people who survived, or the parents of people who died, and even parents of those who are now still being held hostage in Gaza. They all speak about one thing: we gotta unite. Forget the left, forget the right. It's almost like they're speaking our message. Finally, we don't have to work that hard. If only. Because while this is happening and some people's hearts are opening up, you drive down the main highway outside of Tel Aviv and the signs are back up, baby's gotta go and this is that, and left and right and all that craziness, and I'm really scared, man. It's
it's also this week in the US. I'm sure everybody saw, but the president of Harvard, MIT, and Penn, if you didn't see it, what the next generation, the younger generation, and it doesn't even matter about facts, because these things don't have to do with facts. These things have to do with emotions, and the young generation is not supportive of Israel, and it's not like the older generation, and billions of dollars are being pumped into U.S. universities against Israel. So so the future looks bleak from these.
Yeah, on one hand. On the other hand, it's like I feel like the gates are still open. There's still an opportunity to turn things around. We can harness what's happening, even though this is not the full-on mutual guarantee, this concept that we're talking about, this really love for the other, acceptance, all that. It's not there yet. It's more of like a brothers in arms type of relationship, but still it's a good start, right? And there's a softening of the hearts, and I really wish we could harness it. I really wish more people would see it. And I don't know, on the one hand, we have to keep fighting the good fight, right? We have to go out there, even though there's only 15 million Jews and 1.5 billion Muslims, and we have to go out and explain what's happening and show the world that we're not the bad guys, we're not terrible, and it's good to be our friends and all that. We got to do it. You can't not do it. But at the same time, we have to start realizing where the solution really lies.
Imagine this is Miami, and I didn't do anything, and one day he called me a kike.
Like, we can't go and punch every anti-Semite and become their friend.
The world decides what we are.
These things are because a problem exists. These things don't solve a problem.
Well, they don't solve the root of the problem.
He's Israeli and he's American. He's a political commentator.
But that's the biggest threat, the normalization of anti-Semitism.
Chief booker for I-24 News in Tel Aviv and NYC.
I feel like you have the solution. I'm like literally waiting.
A Jew is anyone who craves unity.
If we have the solution, guess what? We wouldn't be here.
He's joining us from Miami, Fred Menachem.
The Jew saw them all, beat them all, and is now what he always was. All things are mortal but the Jew. All other forces pass, but he remains. What is the secret of his immortality?
It's good to see you guys. It's under some dark times, but I'm really happy to be here. And
it's brought us together, so it's not all dark.
That's the point. It brought all Jews together, and I think that's really what we'll get into. But exactly, so there's always gold behind the rainbow, right?
So tell me something, because we did a little prep before this, but in general, you had mentioned some things. I wonder if you can kind of give a big picture. You lived in Israel for a few years. You lived in America. Obviously, you're on both sides. Israelis, for the most part, especially until the last, until the 7th, most of them didn't realize that there's this thing called anti-Semitism, right? Like they lived a very closed off life. Did you know there was a thing called anti-Semitism before the 7th? Was this something that you had to deal with?
Oh, wow. I mean, yes, of course, I absolutely knew there was anti-Semitism. I grew up with a lot of anti-Semitism. We can get into that later if you'd like, but yes, I am fully aware of anti-Semitism. When I was, initially lived in New York until I was 8 years old in Woodmere, actually. And in the 70s, it was a predominantly, you're from New York, Leo, so it was a predominantly Jewish neighborhood in the 70s. Every ethnicity kind of lived in their own neighborhoods. As Jews, we weren't particularly allowed in other neighborhoods. And I think that, for us, it was a wonderful place to live. But, I know for my father, for example, was a partner with Ernst & Young. And as you know, in those days, Jews weren't traditionally able to work in firms like that. And I have to tell you something, my father was always so proud that he was like one of two Jews in the entire firm, one of the biggest firms in the world, until they merged with a Jewish firm. But that always made him proud because there was so much anti-Semitism. And look, I could go into so many things. And if you want me to talk about it, I can tell you about my experiences with a guy by the name of Tom Martinez, who was former member of the Order, which was a white supremacist group. I don't know if you guys remember the Order.
Yeah.
Alan Berg, the radio host, had been killed by them, and he was in this group, and then he, one point, almost went to jail, and he decided, why do I hate people, based on their ethnicity, religion, the color of their skin? And he went to the FBI, and he's actually responsible for taking 23 members of the Order down. They were a dangerous group. And so I was president of SETH'S, which was I grew up Reform, not in New York. In New York, we were conservadox. We came to Miami and, things changed. But so I grew up Reform, but very active in like social justice and that sort of thing. Not the kind of social justice we see today, but extremely active. And I used to bring him, the ADL was very involved back then. It was a much different ADL. And they, they at that point were infiltrating, white supremacist rallies, and they had their picnics. Seriously, I know all about that world. And, Southern Poverty Law Center, I know Morris Dees, his daughter, and I went to camp together. But anyhow, so I was very engaged in that. And I used to bring him to SETH'S conventions and I have him speak. And so I will tell you, and I can get into a lot of anti-Semitism, and if you want me to talk about more of the anti-Semitism I experienced, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, but maybe something that touched you specifically. Obviously, like you said, a lot of it. But like, what touched you?
I can
realize there's an issue here. And
I'll give you an example. So Miami, you would never believe this, right? Miami in the 80s, you'd think that it was like kumbaya with Jews, but that wasn't the case. In fact, now I'm not going to tell you that I believe in violence, because I do not, but I will tell you a story. Because, the two fights I've had in my entire life. But so when I first started, was called junior high. I don't know, now they call it middle school. There was this kid, and I had gone to Jewish school prior to that, but I was, pressured my parents till they could not give in. And I decided I wanted to go to public school, which was amazing because it exposed me to all types of scenarios, some of that being anti-Semitism. And there was this kid, and I won't give his name because he's actually a great kid. And I'm telling you this story for a reason. And he used to smack me in class, really, and I would do nothing. They would throw pennies at me. Imagine, this is Miami. And I didn't do anything. And one day he called me a kike. And I'll never forget. Now, I am not telling you I do not support violence, but sometimes in life, different times, and I punched him in the face, and I was not a tough kid. Long story short, of course, I got suspended, but that kid became a good friend. I tell you that story for a reason. The reason I tell you that story is that in today's world, and we see this often, especially from let's say the far left, right? So easy we throw these labels out, right? Anti-Semitism. Now, there is plenty of anti-Semitism, but like in this case, and in a lot of cases, people are just ignorant. And he and I became good friends because I didn't run away. I didn't point my finger, call you an anti-Semite, you're horrible. And I think that's part of our issue here. And he learned and he changed, and all his friends were Jewish. I mean, and so I think really, if I can bring it back to the point and let you speak, is that it's nuanced. And I think it's so important that we don't so quickly push people away, because then we lose them. And I really believe, and I can get into the far left later, that's dangerous because they're normalizing it. But people like that, they just don't know. And, and we can change people. And I think that's really the key, is to focus on the people we can change and to forget about the ones that we can't.
I think one-on-one, it's a really different story. We know, because we've had on this show, we have people who are regularly labeled by the social networks, by the left, by the ADL. They're labeled as anti-Semites, as white nationalists, all kinds of labels. But when you talk to them, when you ask what's actually bothering you about Jews, where did it come from, where did it start, you as you said, you discover a lot of either ignorance or bias or influence of the environment, or all kinds of things, and you can sort of talk about some things. However, we did see that it almost doesn't matter. Maybe the exception really only proves the rule, and the rule is that it seems like it's not something that is going away. Like you can't go and punch every anti-Semite and become their friend. There's a public opinion battle.
3 times, right?
Exactly.
Right.
I also had a guy on here who we spoke with, who was pretty popular as an anti-Semite, or whatever he was called. He said he wasn't an anti-Semite, but very against Israel, and
Right.
Jews and all the conspiracy stuff like that.
Right.
But he felt like there was really something there. And we had a really warm heart-to-heart conversation with him, where we kind of got to the root of it. And we said, we understand. Like, you see Bernie Madoff, or you see Jews behind these things. You see Jews behind Hollywood, and you see these agendas they're pushing. And we kind of, we came to this like understanding, but like Leo just said, it doesn't matter, because 3 months later, 6 months later, he's back at his old trick again. So it's not that the strategy, our strategy isn't to go out there and find these guys and one by one try and change them, because when you have all of the pressure of the world pushing everybody in one direction, you can't make a solution like that.
I think it depends. So let me tell you, we're talking about anti-Semitism from the past, and that's all good and dandy, right? But I've had 3 experiences in the past year, and saw exactly somebody from the far left with the narrative of we're privileged and all of that. Just yesterday, there's a gentleman who has a food truck where I live, and I've gotten to know him, this guy. And anyway, we talk all the time. And he went through the whole thing with me about Jews having power and having control. And I love, by the way, he's a great guy. He's not, and that's my point. And so, third situation was a couple things. I had a conversation with somebody doing, we used to do DE&I. Of course, everybody was doing it, right?
Yeah.
And I always knew that certainly I support, obviously, every group, and I'm against discrimination, all of those things. But I was watching this, what had been happening. So, with Jews having privilege and us, and they were doing like this microaggression thing. And the only comment about Jews was, don't say Happy Yom Kippur. And I was like, you know what? I was like, that's what you're throwing out here. I'm like, listen, if somebody says it to me, I appreciate the fact that they're acknowledging it. But my point is, and I had a private conversation with this gentleman. So I said to him, hey, listen, I said, because I was listening to him speak. I didn't want to embarrass the guy. I actually did want to embarrass him, but sometimes and I sat with this guy, and he said, I said, sir, that Jews are not just a religion. He's like, what do you mean? I was like, let me ask you. I was like, why did Hitler kill the Jews? He goes, because of the religion. I said, interesting. I said, are you sure about that? He's like, yes. I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, that's interesting, since they killed Catholics who happen to have a Jewish grandfather or grandmother. I said, it wasn't about that. And I said, while we're not a race, right? You guys already know this. I said, the world decides what we are. And then I said the privilege thing, and I went through, I don't have to get into all the mishigas about this, right? And so at the end of the conversation, the guy literally dismissed me, and basically without saying, you're just Jews, you have privilege, and it's unimportant. So I've seen, and then I had a woman, the last thing was recently that I met, and I always knew about the progressive movement and all of that, but I saw up front the craziness of the thought process. And it is, and I hate labels, it is Leninist Marxist ideology about the powerful. She started telling me, she was nice at first, I'm committing genocide, all these accusatory things. I said, you realize that's anti-Semitism? She couldn't, in her mind, she said, you have privilege, fathom the fact that what she was saying was so abhorrent. And I've tried to call her since, because I am obsessed with this, sending her like videos I made. But the thing is, anyway, I know I got off track probably a little bit, and I apologize, but you're just triggering so many thoughts for me. And the thing is that it's becoming so normalized on the far left. And I have to tell you something, this stuff has been passed down from me, from my grandparents to my parents. I literally, and a lot of Jewish people can't even relate, my friends, I lose sleep. I have not slept well since October 7th. I've always obviously been involved, and it's always been a problem, but the far left scares me more than anything, more than the far right, more than the far fringe. And that is what I've seen up front. And I'm disturbed by it.
Ben Shapiro just said the far left is more dangerous to Israel than any terror organization, right? And he just had this quote. Let's take I know we went from 0 to 60, but maybe
that's what I do, man. They used to say Fred Menachem, 0 to 60 and nothing in between. That was somebody penned that. Yeah. You guys just you guys just stop me when I get off tangent. Let me know. Just leave me.
No. I'm doing it for you because I want you to speak. I want you to talk a little bit about what you're actually doing to combat anti-Semitism. What's your daily battle with anti-Semitism? Maybe describe that a little bit, because I know you're also working on an initiative which I mentioned in the beginning. So maybe give us a little bit about that.
What's my own daily battle, or how am I? Look, so my background, you guys were talking about it before. I've always been engaged in this, whether it was professionally or personally. I grew up in a family that my father was, may he rest in peace, he died at 50, but in those short years, that was instilled in me. I think I might have sent you a video once that I found of my father talking about passing it down to his kids. Yeah. And so whether I was in media or I worked for APAC many years ago, I've always been engaged, but as of, recently, I still do media, as you see, and because of what's happening, I'm getting back on air often. But so after October 7th, as you know, everybody in the Jewish community, and for a few days in the non-Jewish community, but that dissipated quickly, was trying to figure out, what can we do, right? What can we do to help? And everybody well-intentioned, but sometimes it was the same thing, right? And I was thinking, I work in cybersecurity now. So I work for a company called ThriveDX. We used to be called HackerU, and we changed the name some years ago, but I started in Israel. And so ThriveDX was an Israeli company. We're Israeli founded. We trained for a long time, governmental entities, the IDF, and so very engaged. So clearly, we were talking about anti-Semitism. It wasn't focused on that, but certainly a lot of the folks that work for us came from units like 8200 and that sort of thing. So we're very high level. We are the largest training provider, one of the largest training providers in the US as it relates to cybersecurity. And we're partnering with the White House now, which is pretty exciting. Typical Jewish thing. We came here with 3 people. So anyhow, and now we're, partnering with the White House and the ONCD. So, but that being said, so I thought to myself, what can we do? So one of the things that's going on now, I don't know how much, do you guys know much about cybersecurity?
I have some clients in that space.
Tell for the audience. What
I will. Okay. So first of all, what is cybersecurity? I mean, I think generally people, sometimes I think everybody knows, but I think generally people, though, they see hacking attacks, right? So we see hacking attacks. We see oftentimes it could be a hospital or a bank. And so a group comes in and steals data, and then it's called ransomware, and then they want to try to get somebody to, to pay to get it back. Okay, traditional, and that's economic. Now, Israel has always been different, because for Israel, it was about life or death, right? Not economic. I mean, yes, that could be. So obviously, I already knew that existed. And so I'll tell you some stuff that's been going on. So we realized, we hear the chatter and stuff. We're cybersecurity, very high level. So we're always a bit ahead of the curve, ThriveDX, the company. So we always know, unfortunately, what's coming. Jewish community is under great risk right now. Recently, did you guys see the 23andMe hacking attack?
No, actually.
Okay, good. Well, good. Then I could teach everybody. The audience is listening.
I don't think anyone else is doing what we're doing. And yeah, and that's exactly it. Nobody can comprehend what we're talking about. Who would even say that anti-Semites have anything valuable to say without saying we're anti-Semitic or we're self-hating Jews? But there's something that everybody's missing. in this whole picture. And the reason why the solution is so close is because we're not waiting for anyone else to change. We're not waiting for the laws to be enacted. We're not waiting for a new politician to get elected. The answer is way closer than everybody thinks.
Like us, hit the bell thing on the YouTube so you can get a notification when a new episode is up. Well, this is the Jew function, and let's get back to our guest.
I'm really glad that nobody knows about this, because this is actually part of the problem and part of why I came up with this initiative. So 23andMe is like, Ancestry.com. It's these and so recently they were hacked. And one of the things that happened is they stole 1 million pieces of data from Ashkenazi Jews. What does that data include? Geographical data, all personal names of relatives. I don't need to explain to you why that can be so dangerous. So that's one example. There's threats now from Iran. So Iran will probably start. Now people are like, no way, why is Iran going to hack a Jewish institution? Well, they'll probably start hacking organizations that are more Jewish and political in nature, maybe the AIPACs of the world and that sort of thing. So they're at risk. So let me give you a real life example of what can happen. Now, so this is not something that's far-fetched. I have conversations, I have a lot of relationships with the folks in the intelligence community, and it is not far-fetched. In fact, one of the biggest risks right now is literally to the Jewish community. That's well known. They're talking about it since October 7th. It had been happening in Israel, but since October 7th, we're at risk. So what can happen? Do you guys remember in Argentina when they blew up the Israeli embassy and then the Jewish Community Center? They bombed it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, during that time, and it's actually, you guys should watch it. If you haven't seen that series about Yossi, the spy, who was, it's a great series on that. You need to watch it. But there was a
really nice rabbit holes, yeah? Go on.
Right. Am I getting in a rabbit hole here? Okay.
No.
Oh, okay. So I'm making a point here, but sometimes I have to tell a story. I'm a Jew, it kind of goes with it, right? So the long short of it is, it was human intelligence. He went in, right? He learned about everything going on. It took time. He was never intending for it to be bombed, but everywhere he had all this data. Now, how quickly, think about it. You're a terrorist group. You want to, God forbid, I don't even want to say it. It's like Kanahara, but you want to go after a Jewish institution. It doesn't take long anymore. All they have to do is hack into people's cell phones, hack into their camera, hack into their microphones, hack into the camera system. They can figure out everything going on without ever entering the building. Talk about the danger of hacking attacks. Somebody clicks on a link. You guys have heard of that, phishing, and that's how they would easily get into somebody's, and it would infect everybody. So that being said, I came up and through my company, through ThriveDX, I came up with an idea of how do we start making folks cyber aware? Just like the two of you are sitting here, you're like, what are you talking about? And that's understandable. It's not just you, that's a general populace. While the Jewish community is at tremendous risk, they don't realize that they are. So we've created we took some of our products and we created something that hopefully soon I'll be rolling out, and we will be sending it out to as many Jewish organizations and institutions as we can. And without getting into all the details, it's going to offer cyber training, but async. They could sit on their computer, take a little test, and it's going to just go through the basic things that folks need to do to stay safe. How phishing links, you guys know what a phishing link is? I don't want to get too technical.
Tell us, just so everyone knows.
Okay. I mean, a phishing link is, a phishing link is basically you get an email. It looks, exactly like it could be, I don't know, Netflix, right? Get an email from Netflix. It says, something happened with your password, whatever it is. You go in and you click on it and you put your credentials. Nobody's paying attention. They're not looking, because what you should do is always look at, where it came from, copy the link, look at it.
I'm sorry, what Seth doesn't remember is that our Twitter account got hacked. Someone,
oh, really?
Yeah, they got in, but it was probably some,
those anti-Semites, damn it. Right. No,
I don't know.
It wasn't.
It looked like the work of a Russian kid who was out for money.
Right.
Because he also made some mistakes, and a friend of ours helped us get the account. But basically, he locked the account, and he wanted money. He was like, "Send me the money. I'll send you this." And we got into this whole thing, but somehow we left the back door open. We were able to get in, change the password, log all computers, all the devices out, but it was,
so it locked all your devices out, like all.
No, at first that's what he did, but then I was able to get in Like there was something left over. I was able to get in and kick him out basically. But it was a tense couple of days. Like we had no control of the account, nothing to do about it. It was crazy. Yeah, a couple of years
You
ago.
know, it's usually human error.
Yeah.
Almost every time somebody clicks something and then they use that as a tool to get into everybody's system. So you
So
click on it.
how is that gonna help Jews? Tell us.
Well, it's going to help protect Jews. So I was talking earlier about Secure Community Network. They're focused on physical security, but we need more resources to focus on cyber.
They say on there 2% of the U.S. population are Jews, and they're the targets of more than 60% of religiously motivated hate crimes.
Cyber leads to security, right? Attacks. The world is different. How is it going to help Jews? Because specifically, this is to disseminate to as many Jewish organizations and institutions as I possibly can. I haven't rolled it out because I'm still trying to figure out who's going to partner with us on it and that sort of thing. But basically, it's going to give you. So let me give you an example. You're a Jewish organization. You're a synagogue, right? Nobody understands. They can so easily get hacked. One thing. So they're going to have the opportunity for all the employees to get this training. We're going to send it over. It's async, right? They could take a test and all of this. And it's basic training. It's just the beginning. We can't do everything right now, right? Right now, we need to just give an entree. So it opens the door for people to be aware.
So we need what you're talking about, and we need the IDF, right? But these things are because a problem exists. These things don't solve a problem.
Well, they don't solve the root of the problem, but
Right.
they certainly. But look, they can keep Jews safe.
No,
So
100%, and we need
right,
that.
I mean,
We all have to do
the
that.
root. I mean, that's another story, right? That's
the main
That's our-
subject.
right, Seth. Do you have the solution for that? Please tell me. Right, exactly. But you know what? If you
That's
had
our
the solution,
business.
the truth is, and I believe this, if we had the solution, guess what? We wouldn't be here.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, what do you mean by that?
If we had the solution, and it had been so easy, Jews would never have survived.
Oh, nobody said it's easy. Nobody said it's easy.
But I'm saying if we actually had the real solution and it was easy for us as the Jewish people, it'd be the end of us as the people.
Yeah, but did you see, there was a funny video. They were talking about the whole sex change thing with kids or whatever, the whole
Right.
thing around that.
Okay.
And they showed like a little boy, I don't know, he's like 5 years old or whatever, and his dad like puts like $1,000 stack of like $1,000 cash in front of the kid. And it's like, Tommy, do you want this? And he has an Oreo and he puts down the Oreo. Or do you want this? And Tommy's like, I want he takes the Oreo.
Right.
So the point is that we know the $1,000 is more valuable, but you could have the solution, but if nobody's buying, Leo and I heard a really great quote. Nobody's going to want it. That's why you're free to publicize it now. So, if nobody, look at the world, look at the United States, like what percent of the US is obese, right? Everybody knows.
Well, a good portion.
Everyone knows it doesn't feel good to be like that. What percent of the world or the US lives a life from day to day that causes them mental duress, that causes them depression, and just repeats these things over and over again?
Are you talking about the Jewish people?
I'm just talking about the human nature.
Right,
I'm talking about human nature.
Right.
The Jewish
Yeah.
people is even,
Funny.
it's more troubling because we can go back for thousands of years and see over and over again. During World War II, there were Jews in America who didn't want to bring refugees in from Germany. During the destruction of the Second Temple, or Hanukkah. What was Hanukkah really? I didn't know. When I grew up as a kid, I thought the Greeks wanted to kill the Jews, and some really strong Jews rebelled against the Greeks. I didn't know until Leo and I started studying it together.
Really?
The Jews who wanted to have a Hellenized life versus the Jews who were more zealous. That's what the fight of Hanukkah was really about.
Correct.
So I didn't know this. So if we have the solution, but there's something about our nature that doesn't let us, or you know what I think it is? We don't realize, it's not clear to us what the compelling future is if we embrace the solution. It doesn't seem, because it's just human nature that if you put $10 in front of me or $100 in front of me, I'm going for the 100. That's nature. We always want the greater reward. We're talking about the most sublime reward possible. Peace on earth, and the wolf shall dwell with the lamb, and and nation will not lift sword against nation. I mean, that's the goal of Jews, to bring that, to be a light to the nations, all this stuff. But for some reason, it has no taste to us. There's no, we're not working towards that. We're not choosing that.
I mean, you're saying as a community, because I will tell you something. I mean, me
As a community.
personally, I think I'd choose that. And I mean, I would imagine there's other people that do. I deeply believe, and I think some people choose it. I think it's passed down in our genes in many ways.
You're
I'm
right.
not sure that I agree 100%. I think I understand what you're saying. It's like being gluttonous in a sense, right? But I think as Jews, we're like, you ever saw I'm dating myself, that television show, The Greatest American Hero?
Yeah. Believe it.
You remember? I'm giving you an
or not.
example. Okay, those are Jews, man. It's passed down through thousands of years that we have a responsibility, right? From a religious perspective, right? To our responsibility to help repair the world, and so we can bring the Messiah. But you know, and even when religion wasn't involved, that's been passed down. So I think sometimes Jews are like The Greatest American Hero. We don't have that damn instruction booklet. Maybe we do, but you know, if that makes sense. And so I don't necessarily, Seth, kind of agree 100% with what you're saying, but I hear you. If
But
that
that's a question, Fred. But that's a
Right.
question. I think what you just said. Every Jew feels it to some extent. Like we said before we started recording, no one came here on the show and talked to us and heard about this idea and said, "No, what you crazy." Everybody agrees. I think what we're seeing, and not only everybody agrees, everybody feels it on their flesh right now. How after the 7th, intuitively, everybody's like, came together. But it was coming together as a sort of as an instinctive, the sheep gather, against the wolves. It's not that unity that we're talking about that we practice daily. On a day-to-day basis, we're just like everyone else, even worse sometimes. We sort of we're not living up to this ideal every day. We remember that ideal. We come together for that ideal. We gather on holidays, on a Shabbat dinner, right? But then we leave that ideal. We go back outside, and it's back to doing what we're doing, and that's the thing that we're after. That what would it take for us to live that ideal, not when the pressure comes, but without it. There's, by the way, David Ben Gurion, who met with Baal HaSulam before the establishment of the state of Israel. He wrote, and I'll just read this short quote from him. He says, "Love thy friend as yourself is the supreme commandment of Judaism. Upon these words, the eternal law of Judaism for all mankind and all the literature of ethics in the world could add nothing to it. The nation of Israel will be worthy of its name only when its social, economic, political, and legal systems will be founded upon these eternal words." And guess what? They're not. It sounds great. They're not. Up to the October 6th, we were about to cut the country in half.
Oh, for sure. Oh, 100%. I mean,
right. Okay. So you say 100%. Everybody say it's clear, but guess what? We're going back to that thing. We're not like, we need to help each other to.
You're saying as Jews?
As Jews, first of all, as Jews.
I have to.
First of all, and it's not Jews as a sort of a. I don't care what's written on your ID. Maybe you're not a Jew by birth. I don't care.
No, I understand.
Yehudi from the word yichud. If you have that desire to bring everyone into this oneness, you're welcome. You're in that circle. That's all we're saying. Above all the differences, different opinions, and all that. But for some, it's so difficult because it's so ephemeral.
Of course. And look, I think Seth, and by the way, I wasn't saying I disagree. I actually agree with Seth and disagree, if that made sense. So I didn't get to finish.
Yeah.
So I think Seth has a valuable point. And yes, we do struggle. What I meant to say was that I think inherently Jews want to be good, right? Do good. Like, we want to make the world better. I think instinctively in our DNA, even if somebody's not religious, doesn't know anything, that it's in there, and there's a guilt if we're not doing the right thing. And that's why I sometimes think that some, like, there's Jewish people out there who've done, committed crimes, and you're like, what? There's lots of people committed crimes. You're like, how did they? And I think sometimes, just like anti-Semitism manifests itself in this way, that guilt of always having to like be in a higher, our parents, at least my parents, and I think a lot of Jewish people, like, we had a high bar to reach. And I think sometimes people go the other way. And I think that, that's a whole nother conversation. But I do think, though, that at the end of the day, Jews want to do good, and I think we're lost in some ways. And maybe October 7th we're lost, right? And like Seth said, you have the $100, you have the 10, and so yes, people reach out for what's easy and what is shiny. But I do think that we can get to that place, and that's what you were saying, Seth, right? When you meant the solution, correct?
I don't think we can define it except as some utopian vision.
Right.
Whatever the best possible out, we all think that when things are going bad, that it's not right. We all think that we just inherently feel that things are supposed to be good and there's supposed to be peace. And when there's not, it's not right. So whatever that is, we're not so naive to think we know exactly how it's supposed to be. It's a group effort, but there is something that's supposed to happen.
I think we're asking people all the time when they come to our show. We asked them if an alien came down here and asked, what's up with this tiny group of people that draws unusual amount of attention and wields so much influence and all these achievements and all that, which we don't need to enumerate here. What's up with them? Who are they? How would you explain to them what is a Jew? I'm curious to know what you think, because I think it comes down a little bit to this one thing that we carve on our flag. I think we're not clear on that. So I wonder, first of all, what would you say to that alien?
You're killing me now. I mean, this is a tough, I'm glad I didn't prepare, by the way, because I'm like stumped for a minute, not stumped, but I mean, who are we? We're a people that have been forced to work together, we hate each other sometimes, right? Like, I always joke around, I'm like, I hate Jews, but I have no choice. And I'm kidding when I say that, but you get it. I mean, we're a people that are, I guess, a victim of our circumstances in a certain way, right? So it's because of the anti-Semitism. And that's what I was saying earlier, and you may disagree with this, but I believe this. It's because of this anti-Semitism. Some people could say it's the Torah and all of that, of course, but it's the anti-Semitism. When the anti-Semitism gets worse, we always pull together, and sometimes things get better, obviously, on the Holocaust, but if that makes sense. I mean, they can get worse as well, but when we recognize who we are, right? Things are positive. How do you explain it to an alien? I'm just trying to wrap my head around this. Look, we're a people that refuse to die. We're a people that refuse to assimilate 100%. If the alien asks, they won't know this, but if you think about this, I'm trying not to go into a rabbit hole. I'm going to be very as linear as I can, but I'm thinking about something. It doesn't matter where we've lived in the world. Yes, we want to be American and we're proud and all of that. And this has been, as far as I'm concerned, the best country for us, Israel and America. I don't historically, we could debate that, but I think it has. I don't mean, will it be this way forever? I don't know. But my point being is that no matter where we've lived, we're not the Irish, we're not Italian. Even when we try to be, like in Germany, we thought we were more German. We're the Jews. We're always going to be the Jews. How do I explain it? Maybe that's the way to explain it. Right? We're a victim of our circumstances. No matter where we go, the rest of the world doesn't want to see us like them. Most people, other groups, would try to be like them. So what would happen? They would assimilate, and other groups that refuse would die out. Our strength and power is in the fact that we're the Jews. And I think in many ways it's our own collectivity, but also it's the anti-Semitism in the rest of the world telling us that either we're superhuman, we're not good enough, and refusing to accept that and bonding together and building success like we've done. I don't know if that would make any sense or if I'm making any sense, but you kind of stumped me a bit. It's kind of a hard thing to, I can answer political questions all day long, Like with my eyes closed, this is a very difficult question. I know what it means for me personally, but you know, to answer it collectively, it's tough.
So first
I
of all,
mean, I can
thank
tell
you
you
for
personally. Yeah, I mean,
no. First of all, thank you for like really giving it you know, a real try.
right,
No,
that was
it's
pretty bad, right? That was
yeah, no, because
hey,
not
hey.
many do. Some people, you know, they
Oh, really? I have no problem. Look, I'm stumping, I'm biting on my lip. Look, you asked me personally, I could
yeah.
tell you all day long because I know, but this is a very hard question. This is good that we're
So
talking about
so
this.
so I'll ask a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Just put a pin on the fact that I would say 75% of your uh, dissertation on the Jews focus on the definition of us owing to some negative outside pressure. So it was like I'm identified by the negative pressure from the outside, which is interesting. Keep that point in mind. The second question, the follow-up would be, okay, you can't really explain, maybe you can't really define in one clear sentence who is
No.
a Jew, what are Jews, but can you explain how come um, we get so much attention? How come such a tiny nation, who by the way did not grow in numbers like the other nations, how come we draw so much attention, unproportional attention, and wield so much influence? How can you explain that maybe to an
I mean,
unsuspecting alien?
I can attempt to. I mean, it's very nuanced, but I think I'll try to be as short as I can. You guys are like throwing questions at me, and you can't expect me to answer this in 30 seconds, guys. But I will tell you, what
Like
is it?
60 seconds.
No, in 60. All right, fine. Okay, God, you're killing me. I need a timer here.
Jew function is really it's a desperate, I guess, desperate attempt to change something about the rise in anti-Semitism that doesn't seem to go away, and looking at history usually ends with something terrible before we reach relative quiet again. But we don't want to reach something terrible. We want to do it now. So that's why we're doing this podcast. And if you like this, also consider leaving a small contribution on our Patreon channel. Right, we both have day jobs, by the way, so we're not hoping to make money from this. We're hoping to see some change of heart.
Any funds are used to get this out there, to get this to people. We consider this the same way you go out every day to get money to feed your family, put a roof over your head. This is also critically important to our future, to our safety, to a good world, not only for Jews, but for everyone.
Well, this is the Jew function, and let's get back to our guest.
You know, there's a lot of reasons. We're very different, and I'm very careful about comparing it, but we're very different than other groups because we thought, and I'm going to go backward in a second, we thought that if we celebrate our success, that people would be so proud of us, the rest of the world. But they're not. So let's go back historically. What are the Jews, right? Jews were people, the first, you know, you could say monotheistic, some would say it's Zohar, but anyway, one of the first monotheistic religions that focused on being better. Like, you know, today they call it Tikkun Olam, but let's be, you know, we can, you know, but making the world, at the end of the day, the responsibility was the Messiah to come, right? And we're supposed to help bring the world to that place of peace and all of that. So then Christianity comes, right? And people sometimes look at us and they know that we try to live, you know, and I'll get back, you know, social justice, and we try to do all these things, and they look at us and they think they can't reach that high bar. So they get angry about it. They can't reach that bar. I'm saying not that they can't, but some people are like, they haven't, right? They're angry about it, that we're trying to live this way. That's one thing. And that is, for some reason, it's a jealousy when, and I'm not saying it's always with everybody, when you would think people would admire us, like, for example, now we're being pushed out as those with privilege, but if other groups did the same thing, the rest of the world would be like, oh my God, that's amazing. They would celebrate it. But when the Jews do it, other groups cannot stand. And I'm not saying everybody, I mean, I have lots of friends, but the younger generation, especially, but just historically, they can't stand that we've been discriminated against And it's not even discriminate. People want to kill us. It's not like racism. It's very different. They want that we still managed to build this level of success. You know, that's one part of it. And I can go, there's a lot of different things. We can get into Christianity, but I think that's kind of a, you know, in a sense, you know, when we're, and I'll give you the last thing, when we're have no power, you know, we're like the dreads and you know, and we're just like animals. And when we have power and things get difficult for other people, you know, we're the group of people that has never, ever been assimilated to the level that they would like us to. They can't stand it, the Inquisition, no matter what, we refuse. And when we've tried, like in the Holocaust, you know, and at the end of the day, people can't stand it in many ways. And they don't know it, it's subconscious, but
Yeah.
I think the biggest threat, bar none, is that on the right, and I grew up with that far, and they were dangerous. I have been around those guys. I was attacked by David Duke, not physically. I mean, I've had death threats. You can look, you'll find tweets. I've been in that right-wing world, but it's changed. The biggest danger right now in America, and really in Europe too, but in America, is that anti-Semitism now is becoming normalized. That 18 to 34-year-old group, that's the danger, is that they can actually say things and believe them, and there's nothing that will change their minds, because it's because we're the oppressors now. And so the biggest danger is what you saw, the institutions. Those 3 college presidents sitting there answering those questions the way that they did sums it all up.
Of conduct or rules regarding bullying and harassment, yes or no?
If targeted at individuals, not making public statements.
Yes or no? Calling for the genocide of Jews does not constitute bullying and harassment?
I have not heard calling for the genocide for Jews on our campus.
But you've heard chants for intifada.
I've heard chants, which can be anti-Semitic depending on the context, when calling for the elimination of the Jewish people.
So those would not be according to the MIT's code of conduct or rules?
That would be investigated as harassment if pervasive and severe.
Ms. McGill, at Penn, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's rules or code of conduct? Yes or no?
If the speech turns into conduct, it can be harassment, yes.
I am asking specifically calling for the genocide of Jews. Does that constitute bullying or harassment?
If it is directed and severe or pervasive, it is harassment.
So the answer is yes.
It is a context-dependent decision, Congresswoman.
It's a context-dependent decision. That's your testimony today. Calling for the genocide of Jews is depending upon the context. That is not bullying or harassment. This is the easiest question to answer yes, Ms. McGill. So is your testimony that you will not answer yes?
If it if the
yes
speech
or
becomes
no?
if the speech becomes conduct, it can be harassment. Yes.
Conduct meaning committing the act of genocide? The speech is not harassment? This is unacceptable, Ms. McGill. I'm going to give you one more opportunity for the world to see your answer. Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's code of conduct when it comes to bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
It can be harassment.
The answer is yes. And Dr. Gay, at Harvard, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
It can be, depending on the context.
What's the context?
Targeted as an individual, targeted at an individual.
It's
severe,
targeted at
pervasive.
Jewish students, Jewish individuals. Do you understand your testimony is dehumanizing them? Do you understand that dehumanization is part of anti-Semitism? I will ask you one more time. Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
Anti-Semitic rhetoric. When
And is it anti-Semitic rhetoric?
Anti-Semitic rhetoric, when it crosses into conduct that amounts to bullying, harassment, intimidation, that is actionable conduct, and we do take action.
So the answer is yes, that calling for the genocide of Jews violates Harvard Code of Conduct, correct?
Again, It depends on the context.
It does not depend on the context.
No, it depends on the context. It depends on the context.
Right, but that's the biggest threat, the normalization of anti-Semitism. It's the oppressed versus the oppressor. Jews were no longer oppressed. This is what's going to happen. If somebody loses their job, this is anti-Semitism. The Jews are going to be blamed for having too much power. If it was the opposite, right? We say we're being victims, right? If we didn't, this is exactly where anti-Semitism is where it's a losing battle, but that's what's going to happen. I hope they do fire them, but let me tell you something, that anti-Semitism after that from the far left is going to get worse.
I grew up in my 20s. I was living in upstate New York, and I always used to drive past this neighbor who had a thing in front of his house, parking for Irish only with an Irish flag. And it's cute. And, could you imagine if there was a sign that someone put in front of their house parking for Jewish only? You would think that it was I'm thumbs upping it.
Thumbs up.
Sorry. That's my AI here. No, there's something, and so obviously we know if it was Jews only, like it could never happen, right? So like, in the same way, if someone called for the genocide of Blacks or Native Americans or Asians,
wouldn't
or
even be a
any other group-
conversation, Seth.
Exactly. So what Leo
And
and I
rightly
are
so,
coming
by
at-
the way, as
Yeah,
it should
of
be
course.
to us.
So what
Rightly
we're
so, right.
coming at is that this group called Jews is treated differently than every other group in the universe, in the known universe. Of every group we know, this group is treated differently. And therefore, the way we need to deal with it isn't through all of the regular channels. Yes, we have to do things like cybersecurity. Yes, we have to deal maybe through politics. Yes, we have to have the IDF. But to get to the core of this, we have to get outside the box to solve this, because this is not a problem like every other problem. We're not treated the same as every other creature.
And when we say that, Seth, I'm sorry, when we say that, there you go. You know what they say? Because they say I'm saying when we say that, they say, there we go with we're the chosen people.
Let them say it.
Yeah,
Let them
right.
say it.
No, I know it. And when they watch this podcast, if not, they're going to be like, listen to him talking about it.
Let them say it. The message has to get out.
Okay.
So
Look,
reality.
200 years ago,
we
150 years
don't.
ago, Herzl said that we are an historical assembly of people that clearly belong to each other by a very obvious connection, whose unity is maintained by the virtue of the existence of a common enemy. That was the birth of Zionism. And right, but we see that the state of Israel, the creation of the state of Israel, which we thought would be already okay, we'll remove the Jews take the Jew out of the world, put him in his own place. That would put them things in order. Did not solve the problem. Did not solve the problem one bit. So, right. So, and then Jews came to Israel, and even in Israel, I'll read another quote. Baal Salam says, a union that exists due to an outside cause is not at all a national union. In that sense, we're like a pile of nuts, united into a single body from the outside by a sack that envelops and unites them. Their measure of unity does not make them a united body, and each movement applied to the sack produces in them tumult and separation. Thus, they consistently arrive at a new union and partial aggregations. The fault is that they lack the inner unity, and their whole force of unity comes through outside incidents. So that was 50 years after Herzl. Baal Salam writes that. We don't want that anymore. We don't want to be defined by them, by the outside.
Right.
We've seen enough to agree that, yes, we're different. Okay, we can't define ourselves to aliens, fine, whatever. We're different. We yield an unusual amount of by the way, we do have a definition, but we're
not religion. I mean, we're a religion. We're a people. I mean,
right. It's none of those things.
I mean, I guess I could have described it that way,
but it's not. It's none of those things. It's none of those things. It's none of those because every definition is a contradiction.
Right.
We're not even going there because we know it's inferiority complex.
Tell me, guys, Seth Lee, are you guys going to tell me? I'm like, I feel like you have the solution. I'm like literally waiting. It's now past one. What is the solution?
So the solution.
Where are we? How do you define us?
So the Jews and again, we say it in every episode, so for some people, it won't be a surprise at all. But in every episode, we say that the Jews were formed around an ideal of unity. Yehudi from the word yichud, to unite, to unify into one. That was the essence of this group's reason for being, right? The raison d'être of Jews was to carry the ideal of unity and bring it to the world. The other name for Jews, by the way, is Ivrim, right? Hebrews. Ivri from the word ma'avar, to be a transition, a conduit of that quality to the world. Our entire history is basically the story of our people coming together, reaching the highest point of unity in the temple, in the form of the temple. The ideal of unity reached its highest pinnacle there. First temple, second temple, fell down because of unfounded hatred, and then we were exiled again as part of a natural progression to bring this idea of unity to the whole world. No longer could we live in unity in Israel just between us Jews like we did for a few hundred years between the temples. That was a good time, by the way. We have an entire episode on that, episode 7 in our podcast on that time. And now, 2,000 years later, it's time to unite the whole world. And it has to start with one group, because you can't start a change with everyone. Change doesn't come to everyone. It starts with a small group and then it ripples out, right? That's all that we're saying. A Jew is anyone who craves unity. And if you have a memory of that unity, if you feel it somewhere in the back of your head, if you feel it in your heart around the Sabbath table, if you feel it during the holidays, during the rough moments, that's a sign that you have that in you. We're after that definition. And we're after at least an agreement that maybe this is something we should explore. Not only when shit happens, but all the time. Let's do a year of unity between the Jews. Forget all the factions. You can argue, as you say. You can fight, you can argue, but not cancel each other out like we've been doing very, very terribly in Israel, and also, by the way, in America in the last year. This separation, this polarization, these Jews on the far left, far right. We don't want any of that. Terrible. That it's time that we actually form this unity that has a high purpose. A unity not for our pocket, a unity for a higher purpose.
I think, by the way, I don't know how old you are, Leo. I have no idea. I mean, I'm in my 50s.
I'm 85.
No, you're not. Really? Good Botox. I don't know how old you are, Seth, but it's okay. I need Botox, by the way. Look at this. Anybody watching? You see that? Like the
yeah, just
right,
slide
no,
the
I
Zoom.
do actually, right. And by the way, I'm single. Am I allowed to say in the show? Any ladies out there, Jewish ladies?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Right. Yeah, I'm Fred Menachem, single, good guy, little
We'll
neurotic.
hook you up.
Right,
Come-
exactly. Needs
come
a
down to
little
it.
neurotic, kind of needs, babysat sometimes. But all joking aside, I'm actually not really joking. But I think, I think that when I was growing up, because I saw, and you saw, I'm guessing you guys saw on some level as well, that the unity was Jews having no choice but to fight together to become whatever definition of successful, without getting into all of that, we had to get together.
Yeah.
And we had no choice, even if we disagreed and hated each other and argued. And I'm not saying that's circumstantial, but if we could, obviously, in a perfect world, kumbaya, if we could manage to do that, it wouldn't matter what everybody else thought. Exactly what you're saying.
And it's not, but it's not kumbaya, by the way. It's a very serious business.
I'm being.
No, because we tried it.
It
Seth
seems
and I,
impossible. Right.
Seth and I we're both hippies. I had dreadlocks to my
Right.
ass. Seth had every head covering you can think of.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, dude. We
How
tried
old
it
are
all.
you? If I might ask, are we allowed to say that on here? I
You
can't hear you.
you
You're
muted
on
Seth.
mute.
I was born in 74.
Me too.
Okay. Oh, you're 2 years younger than me. Okay. You're my
Yeah.
brother Seth's age. Okay.
Me too.
All right. So you were a hippie, like deadhead. You were a deadhead, Seth. Come on.
I was. I'm a
course.
retired deadhead.
Widespread
When Jerry,
panic?
when
Panic?
Jerry died, I retired. I hung up
Yeah. Were you a panic guy
tie-dye.
too? Widespread
No.
panic guy?
No, I missed it.
No. Okay. All right. So,
So,
yeah.
so we tried that. We know it's not that, but it was a precursor to that. By the way, that whole 70s love revolution, it was an attempt, right? It was something. And guess what? All the guys that, Ram Dass is a Jew. He talks about love. Everybody, you'll find a Jew in every position, religiously, ideologically, in the media, in finance. They're all ready to pass that idea of love to the system. We have the infrastructure in place. We just need to start broadcasting it.
Listen, I'm not a perfect person, but I will tell you, I think I'm not saying I'm special. I think I'm a bit different. I try to live by Pirkei Avot, a few things, like there's a saying in there. And I literally have always tried to live this way. It says, and if everybody could, and I think, by the way, when people see other people trying to live a certain way, I think that helps. You know, people are afraid to. We always think somebody's trying to screw us. And so we're always trying to protect ourselves. But I live a few different ways. But, you know, they say what? An evil person says what's yours is mine and what's mine is mine, right? The average person says what's yours is yours and what's mine is mine. But somebody trying to be a tzaddik, you know, says what's mine is yours and what's yours is yours. And I mean, that there's a lot of things, but I think that alone, I spend my life trying to live that way. I am not somebody that cares. I have a lot of ups and downs in my life. That could be a whole nother podcast. I spend my time trying to give that message to the world by my actions. And I think there's so many things in Judaism, but that specific thing, if everybody could learn to live like that and be in balance with our animal soul and our godly soul and live that way, that's not politics. Forget politics and all that. We just live that way. That would solve the problem, in my opinion.
Also, in our opinion.
Yeah,
Fred,
we agree. You're special and unique.
Yeah.
and you're
single.
good or bad. I mean,
And
I'm
you're
not sure when I
single.
leave, that's going to be like this guy, man, interrupted me.
No.
Just-
Only good. Only good here.
Um,
We're
been
very
fun, man.
happy to speak to you today.
Hey,
look,
listen, I'm here to fight, man. I'm ready to, guys, whatever you guys need, whatever you want to do, count me in. I am hardcore. This is my mission. I think my life might be moving in a different direction at some point, not by it. I'm just saying I have taken this back. I've always had it, but this is happening and I will not keep my voice quiet. As you've seen, I've gone on some shows that, you know,
Yeah.
Roger Stone, I don't always, but I will talk to anybody. Like that audience isn't always anybody that's willing to listen and stand up for us and might have alternates. So I am here for you guys, whatever you need. If you need me to help you find guests, I know a lot of people, just reach out and let's all do our part. You know, that's the most important thing.
amen and hallelujah.
Thanks,
But,
Fred.
I mean, we couldn't have asked for a better, you know, parting words. You know, a rallying cry from Fred Menachem. You know, we do have to wrap up, and it sounds like you know, it sounds like we can probably have, you know, 2-3 more shows easy with you. I feel like you have a lot of stories. We're with you. That's our mission. That's why the Jew Function exists, and that's what we're asking everybody who listens. We like you don't need to do anything. You don't have to spend money or you know, do crazy things. No, just from wherever you are, start spreading that idea. Because
Start spreading the news.
there you go.
I would
Because
tell you one thing, if I could do this, if I had enough money, just enough shekels to like live and not worry, I would be doing this work for my life. Really. And this would be my work. This is what I'd be doing, you know, and I'll do it anyway, but
we have a friend who's a famous musician in Israel. He says, I don't need a lot of money. I need a little bit of money, but all the time.
Right. Exactly. Right. Exactly. I'm waiting on. Is the check in the mail, Seth? Deal? Yeah, wait. Right.
Yeah,
Anyway,
check is
guys,
in the mail.
it's been a real pleasure. I hope that we can do this again. Thank you for having me. I didn't know what to expect at all. So, you know, it was good, and I'm looking forward to seeing you guys again.
Thank you very much. Everybody who's listening, please like, share, subscribe, comment, hit the bell to get updates, and catch our live shows Sundays around noon Eastern, and we'll see you all next time. Thank you so much for the Jew Function. Fred, all the best.
Happy Hanukkah, by the way.